child, I always found myself needing to find ways to express myself, to almost imagine beyond myself in order to be able to contextualize myself in the world.
Don't you know that you're a fact? 'Cause I'm a fact, and we're a fact, and that's a fact. Happy holidays, famous lovers. Welcome to another episode of That's a Fact. This episode we are going to be calling as the visual arts edition, because beside me, accompanying me in this episode, is visual artist Emma Blencowe and multidisciplinary artist Buhle Ngaba.
Hello.
It's so good to have you, and it's such an honor to have you. You are people and artists that I deem as incredibly talented and have an incredible artistic voice and have something to say through your art. So without further ado, on that note, I'd love it, and I think we all love it, if you could introduce yourselves, let us know about who you are, what you do, and where you come from. Emma, let's start with you.
I'm Emma Blencowe, and I am a visual artist from Cape Town, although at the moment I'm in London. I work a lot in the field, I guess, of like fat liberation. So I talk a lot about like the fat body, the fleshy body, what it means to exist in that kind of body, in many different ways. And I mostly work with food coloring, and I make very large scale paintings with food coloring, and it kind of acts like a watercolor. So that's what I do. I also work with other media, I guess. I work digitally, and I'm experimenting a lot with film and photography at the moment, and with digital painting. So I do a few different things. So I mostly talk about the body and having a body that's different.
My family is originally from the Northwest. I am a professional dabbler. I do many different things, but I'm an actor, I'm a writer, an arts activist. By way of format and what I work in, it's predominantly theatre, although recently as a result of COVID, but also because I'd actually been thinking about theatre translated into film, translated into an experience of some sort, by way of what happens between a live audience and a performer. But as a result of COVID, my one-woman show is now a screenplay that was created with me and several other artists. And so I've actually dabbled a lot with visual artists alongside my director, alongside film directors. I'd say I make a lot of collaborative work with my voice as a heartbeat that kind of connects it all.
That is such a profound statement and such a profound message to put through your art. And just for our interest's sake, what is the name of your one-woman show?
Oh, it's called Swan Song.
Swan Song.
Yes, very cheerful. If anyone knows what that means, it's funny. My very first screenplay, or my very first play, is literally about, this is not a spoiler alert, I promise you. Swan Song is a metaphor, though, for the very last performance that a performer does before they die. So it actually explores a lot of grief. It's also a Black femme voice on stage, speaking for herself, and it's a coming of age tale, which is really interesting too, just because I think that there's a lot of stories put onto our bodies as opposed to the stories that we actually share amongst each other as women of color. And I would imagine similarly to Emma's work also, and what she speaks about and how you described the way that you engage with your work.
That's really a beautiful message and a beautiful plot to put to this one-woman show. And hopefully for our followers, we can advertise that. You'll probably see it below the screen. So as per tradition for a virtual women's circle, we will be going around and asking questions related to the art that Emma and Buhle practice. Question number 1, why did you start practicing visual arts?
I've always felt the need to express myself. Even as a child, I always found myself needing to find ways to express myself. Even as a child, I always found myself needing to find ways to express myself and to almost imagine beyond myself in order to be able to contextualize myself in the world, you know. I know it's the glorified artist's tale also of, you know, feeling different, but I think that we all are, and essentially it's how we tell that story, you know what I mean? That kind of informs how we go about the way the world as ourselves, you know, not looking at all of the structures that also influence all of that. But I digress. By the time I was about 3 years old or 4 years old, I was already, for example, my mom thought that I could definitely read. I couldn't. I just memorized the stories as she was telling me because I loved them so much. But I also associated very much the visual image with the story that was being told. So I think I was always very interested in sound and expression. And also I started to note how my sounds or my expressions would impact those around me. So as an audience, for example. So sometimes people would be coming to visit my mom or my parents or whatever, or my grandparents, and I'd have to make them tea, you know, but I would insist, you know, that my trade-off would be I'm going to perform my latest show, which would often be me maybe reading from a storybook, or maybe I'd made up a nursery rhyme or something. But I always felt like I wanted to be seen in some way, but later in life I've started to understand, after a lot of therapy too, that sometimes you pick something because you're looking to hide in plain sight. So for me, by way of performance, you know what I mean, I put myself on a stage so that they could be looking at this and not so much at that, but I use all of that background stuff, you know, to kind of inform my work. So I would definitely say that process for me is part and parcel of what I create, whether that be what I'm writing or what I'm performing. The process definitely informs the work very directly. So in Swan Song, my one-woman show, you know, it's very much informed though by my director Ilana Celia's work, who's also very much an experimental visual artist. The headlamp, you know, the headlight that we work with in a theater to create shadow work, for example, is very much of her work. Or I started working with, you know, collage / visual artist Satara Stodel in creating visual images at the back of the stage, because I was so interested in how the live body interacts, you know, with the digital space in that way, or digital art, let's say, or what people deem digital art, but also what all of those responses evoke in an audience, you know. I suppose, which is why it leads me to, by the time we got to, you know, the first virtual National Arts Festival, I was ready in that way to experiment, because the work that I created was already experimenting. I hope that answers the question. Basically, because I need to express myself, and I've always had that need. And that's why. And I enjoy the different forms that takes. And it's a great privilege to be able to do that. And it's not easy to maintain, you know. I'm sure Emma would agree, because, you know, from working with food coloring and wanting to pick up a camera and wanting to, and people are like, no, this is what you do. And you're like, but I feel like I might just see it in this way. Like, this is a Tretyakov, you know, the Dying Swan print. And the funny thing is, on my site now, for example, as part of my Adapt or Fly merchandise for Swan Song, I have a ceramicist, Nazreen Rourke, in Joburg, who, there's a photograph of me basically performing the Dying Swan, but it's me, I'm a Black woman, you know what I mean? Performing this particular dance in this way with this classical music, with my plastic wings, and then a dancer, someone that people deem a dancer. Sean Ulf takes this amazing photo that a ceramicist in Joburg then turns into a ceramic that's superimposed, you know. I'm really interested in that relationship. I just spoke a lot, but there you go. That is it. Go buy the ceramics for Christmas, guys. Good. Bye. They're all different and beautiful. Get it.
When you grow up feeling different, and obviously my idea of feeling different is very different to either of yours, but I grew up feeling different, and I I expressed myself through art, and I used art and my like ability to make art as a way to tell people about myself. I don't know, it was like, I'm very inspired by storytelling as well. I'm obsessed with stories, I'm obsessed with books, and a lot of the art I create is based on dreams I've had that I've written down and turned into stories. I'm obsessed with dreams and their messages and what they mean. um, and I turn a lot of that into my art. So it's very much like a therapeutic process for me, a way of processing who I am, of understanding who I am, of talking about why I am different, why I feel different, and finding other people who resonate with that because they in a way feel that too. Maybe not the same way I feel it, but they feel it too, and they feel like they too have not been seen. And I think I use my art to be seen, to be heard in a way. I'm not a performer, but I perform through my art, the visual that I make. So I think that was one of the reasons why I started making art, is just to live, to exist. It was that or die. I don't know. That sounds very dramatic, but it's how it feels at the moment. It's like either I express this or I collapse. So I that's why I make art, because it's about existence for me, and connection and storytelling and love and so many things. So that's why I make art.